Petals fell over the blood, creating an image of pure disharmony and destruction. When the people assigned to the scene finally arrived, what they found was the end of Manhwa, a complete massacre. Everyone was dead. Everything had been destroyed. Only scattered petals remained over the red ground. One of the men made a silent prayer for the dead, while the other said that this could only be the work of a demon, because no ordinary person would dare to stain the name of Manhwa like that. The older man, however, interrupted when he noticed that someone was approaching, and in fact it was a survivor. Wounded and almost without strength, he said that Manhwa had been wiped out by a single person. Before he could say anything more, a luminous attack appeared from a distance and struck him again, destroying him completely. The old man demanded that the cursed enemy show himself, and then the one who had killed everyone from Mount Huaper appeared, finishing tearing off the head of the last survivor as if it were nothing. He asked if everyone was there. Shaolin, Wudong, Qingcheng, Namgung. They had brought more than enough audience to watch. The skinny boy with black eyes and black hair simply stared at everyone without showing emotion. The master of Wudong asked who he was and why he had committed that massacre. The boy answered that he came because the Hua sect said it was stronger. Then he threw the head of an old man in front of them and said that it was only words and that they were not strong at all. That head belonged to the leader of the Mount Hua sect. The boy then commented that since everyone important was there, he imagined they were stronger than the people of the sect. Of course, everyone prepared to kill him at that exact moment. Determined to avenge the souls of Mount Hua, they rushed at him at the same time, coordinating the attack. The boy simply replied that just as he thought, this place was very entertaining. Later he was dead. The boy who controlled that character removed the virtual reality glasses and commented to himself if he had finally died in front of a coordinated attack of that level. He was playing Mirroring Online, a newly released virtual reality game that had become controversial because of the extreme violence, with bloodbaths and extremely realistic dismemberments. The game had been flooded with emails demanding its closure, but for him there was no other game like that. Maybe next time he could try a quieter approach. Meanwhile, on television, the disappearance of CO No from Dado Industries was being reported, and the boy casually commented that assassination also seemed like a good choice. At that moment, he heard murmurs coming from the closet at the back of the room, and said that it was true. That guy was still there. He approached the kidnapped man, the same man who appeared on television begging for mercy. No pleaded for mercy, saying he did not understand why he had been kidnapped, and swearing that he had done nothing. The boy simply threw several developed photos on him, showing that man committing terrible acts against women, things so cruel that they did not even need to be described. The kidnapped man asked how he had obtained that. The boy replied that if he had truly done nothing, he would never have become his prey. The man said he regretted it, that he would never do anything like that again, and that he could pay any amount of money. But he was grabbed by the killer, who commented that that phrase of begging for mercy was already getting tiresome. Before he could strike with the hammer, the kidnapped man reacted by biting and managed to free himself from the restraints, saying that now the kidnapper was dead. The boy simply smiled. Even with the man holding a sledgehammer, he easily dodged, landed a punch straight into the stomach, and then a knee to the face. The man fell to the ground again, begging for mercy. He began to move away slowly, trying to find a way out, but ended up entering a cold storage room. Inside there were many and many bodies hanging. After all, he was in the hunter's house, and there the prey was him. He began begging for mercy again, but did not even need to continue. At that moment, the house was invaded. Several police officers entered quickly, and the detective announced that Dong Bongsu was under arrest for kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and murder. Dong asked how the police had found that place, but the detective simply fired a shot into the air and ordered him not to move, warning that the bullets were real. Dong realized that he was in a situation very similar to the one in the game, and smiled again. He asked the police if they had any idea that the trash behind him had killed 6 women, tortured all of them, and taken photos while playing with their bodies. He said that the bodies hanging there were all the same, that most of them were also killers. To him, those men were beasts, carnivores that hunted innocent people. He was nothing more than a hunter who hunted those beasts. Then he asked the detective if he understood that the person who should take the bullet was the damned fat man behind him. The detective replied that maybe it was true, but before his eyes and the law, all he saw was a psychopathic killer who kidnapped and murdered people. Dong said that the police would never understand him. Then he picked up the sledgehammer while the detective kept his gun aimed at him. Before any order could be repeated, the businessman's head had already been smashed against the ground. At that same moment, Dong was struck by several bullets. While his body was being pierced, he thought that if he had another chance, he would like to be born in a place where there were plenty of beasts, a place where he could kill them without concern, a world where that was allowed. And when he finally died, he truly woke up. He was certain he had heard the sound of gunshots, but now he was facing a man who said he had thought he was already dead. The man grabbed him by the collar and asked if he had any idea how much work it had taken to drag him from the market to that place. He said he might as well kill him right away, but decided not to, and that he would deal with it tomorrow. Then he punched Dong and threw him to the back of a warehouse. Dong even tried to fight back with a stone he found on the ground, but the moment he he moved his muscles, he felt an absurd pain, far greater than it should have been. That was when he realized that the body was not his. The body was full of old scars. When he looked at the horizon and saw the full moon lighting low buildings, simple houses, and a lake in the distance, he recognized the scene. That was a dying world. Instead of crying in despair or hatred, perhaps feeling only a strange dissatisfaction, he cried from happiness. His wish had come true. He was in a world where only the truly strong survived. Memories began to invade his mind. The name of that body was So-Sam, a boy who had always been treated like trash. He worked in filth, literally cleaning feces in the stable. A man appeared saying he had a job for him, and told him to drop what he was doing. So-Sam answered that he had not finished cleaning yet, but he was grabbed by the man, who asked if he thought he was asking for a favor. He explained that the Danri clan already allowed an orphan like him to sleep there, and that he seemed to have forgotten his place. He was nothing but a slave. He was dragged by that fat man who woke him up with beatings, and taken to a forge full of weapons ready for delivery. The seller asked why he had come alone. The man replied that Brother Makiel was again at the inn, and the seller commented that it was not his problem, but that it would be difficult to transport so many weapons with only 2 people. The man then pointed at So-Sam, saying the brat was strong, and would manage perfectly together with that useless donkey. He threw the boy to the ground, and ordered him to get up and start carrying the weapons. He also remembered that he had an appointment at the Bangyang Inn, so So-Sam would have to do extra work that day. The seller wanted to say something, but did not dare to oppose the Danri clan, so Sam was forced to carry sacks full of weapons, tearing his skin several times along the way. When he was almost finished, it was already the end of the day. The seller asked why he did not rest a little, saying that he looked terrible, and that it seemed like he would die. So Sam answered that he was fine, and limped back, feeling very cold, asking himself if he would really continue living that pathetic life. On the way, he bumped into a large martial artist, who told him to get out of the way. Before he could even finish apologizing, he was punched in the face, and then kicked. He was beaten right there in the middle of the street. While being beaten, So Sam wondered when everything had gone wrong. Maybe when his whole family died in the storm in which only he survived, or when he knocked on the door of the Danri clan, asking for shelter. Lying on the ground almost dead, he could only say that he was cold, and asked someone to save him. The next morning, Dong woke up with all those memories assimilated, and murmured that the name of that body was So-Sam. He looked at himself in the reflection of the dirty water in the stable, and realized that it was the same place from the memories. The real So-Sam had been beaten to death and dragged there. That was the moment when he took over that body. Suddenly beside him, the system window of Muram Online appeared. The world of true strength. He immediately recognized that system. Meanwhile, the same man who had earlier dragged So-Sam out of the stable was bringing food for him, complaining that he was the only one who had to deal with that useless burden of the entire clan. He thought that if the brat had finished the job, he should have gone straight home, but instead he ran into Pang Do-ryong, the father, a true psychopath who beat the boy almost to death. The man reflected that now he had to clean up the mess of that bastard. He wondered if he should simply kill him, but concluded that it was far too risky. If he was not careful, his own head might roll first. Then he kicked the stable door, threw the bowl of food inside, and said that that damned useless slave only served to make his life harder. When the man left the food in the stable, Dong thought that it had already been the second week since he woke up in that body. Based on what he had observed about that man, about Machiel, and about the world around him, he organized the situation in his own mind. First, the people there used Hanja, but that was not China. Hanja were Chinese characters used in the Korean language to represent meanings, ideograms that had a strong Chinese base. Even so, that place was not any country he knew. The most important thing was the martial arts, techniques that in his world only existed in movies, novels, and games. People flying across rooftops, moving faster than the eyes could follow. From the stable he watched the clan training, and he was certain that it was real. The martial arts there were not fantasy. It was like living inside a live-action version of Muram Online. The second point was the system window. For some reason, the status window of Muram Online was still functioning, and only he could see it. At first, he thought everything was still a game because of the system and the martial arts, but he could feel the reality. People had their own emotions. They felt pain, fear, and anger. They were alive, so he no longer knew whether he was a player or not, whether that was a virtual world or something different. At that moment, the large man came back, asking if So-Sam was living a good life while someone else had been punished because of some idiot. Instead of answering, Dong grabbed the food and poured everything into his mouth at once. The man complained that he was talking to him, but the boy simply crushed the bowl with his bare hands. He grabbed one of the shards and drove it into the neck of that bastard. The man, called Guok, began to agonize, coughing blood. Dong told Guok that the child he knew had died a long time ago. Then he grabbed more shards and kept stabbing until he died. He did not stop until blood splashed all over his body. As he felt the warmth of that blood, he thought that it was warm, and at that moment he understood that none of that was a game. It did not matter if he was a player or a character. That was reality. He felt the energy of killing. He felt the great law of that world emanating from his own body. The law of the jungle. The strongest survives. There was no need to hide one's true nature there. He could follow his own heart. People like him, carnivores, monstrous beings. Now he could move freely in that jungle called Muram. It was as if his own body already remembered how to do it. The hunt had begun. For true predators, that place was paradise. After finishing his first kill in that world, he thought that normally it would not be worth the effort to hunt someone like Guok, but he needed to confirm something. He opened the Muram online system inventory. There was something different. In the game game, the inventory worked with slots, each item occupying a space. Now it was a single vast empty space capable of storing anything. He stuck his hand inside and realized that it was enormous, something like 300 square meters. He approached the body and thought that if it worked in the game, why would it not work there? Then he stored Guok's body inside the inventory. It worked. A body of that size disappeared in the blink of an eye, stored magically. Dong was impressed. That was incredible. He still did not know if he could place living beings inside it, and if he did, whether they would remain alive or die, but he intended to test that soon. The next morning, he returned to the routine as a slave of the clan. He watched those damned people with indifference. Suddenly, Mashiel approached and slapped the back of his head, saying that he had heard that now he was mute. Dong simply smiled and pretended that he really could not speak. Mashiel told him to stop loafing around and go take the horse out for a walk. Dong lowered his head in obedience. Mashiel commented that he did not know what to do with a brat who could barely speak properly. Later in the city, Dong walked the horse while observing the shops and the people who lived there. Suddenly, a group of delinquent children started throwing stones at him. One of them shouted that it was the stupid retard. So Sam, who could not even speak anymore. When they began approaching to mock him even more, Dong walked toward them and stared at them with a deadly gaze. The boy was shocked when he looked into Dong's eyes, but Dong pretended to be mute again and simply endured the stones in silence before leaving. Meanwhile, Machiel complained that he should not be wasting time cleaning weapons, especially with that bastard Guak missing for days, and he even wondered if he had died somewhere. That was when he saw Dong coming out of the weapon storage. Everything was already clean and polished. McCall asked if the brat had done all the work, and Dong simply confirmed with a nod. He had done everything. McCall thought it was strange, because the boy had almost died a few days earlier, and now he seemed like a different person. He was fast, efficient, and even did things that had not been asked of him. It seemed that he had finally become useful. Not only that, Dong even handed him a pouch full of coins. McCall commented that the brat had finally learned how the world worked, and told him to keep it that way. He left satisfied, happy with the money in his hands. Dong, however, thought that the idiot had not even realized he had just paid for his own funeral. At the end of the day, Machiel went straight to the night house. He decided that he would visit Chosun that night. The man at the entrance recognized him and asked if Master Machiel was really there. He confirmed and said he came to see Chosun. The attendant found it strange, since he usually called a Anig, but Machiel showed the pouch of coins and asked if he was doubting him. The man said he would never doubt, and pointed to the last room on the second floor, promising to send Chosun. Eager, Machiel waited. When the woman arrived, he thought that she truly was a beauty. He began drinking to warm himself up, ready to enjoy the night, without imagining that red eyes were watching him through a crack in the wall. Dong had already infiltrated the night house, and was waiting for the right moment to attack. While Machiel prepared himself, the attendant thought that the man wanted a girl young enough to be his daughter, but money was money. In the meantime, another pouch full of coins appeared, delivered by someone interested in a king. The attendant commented that there was a mute waiting for her on the second floor. Dong was there to have fun, but not in the way others imagined. When Machiel was already feeling confident, believing he had made a good deal, he was suddenly caught by ropes that bound his arms. The knot tightened more and more. He could barely see the face of his opponent. He tried to react with a headbutt, and the two of them fell together, exactly as Dong had planned. On the ground, he continued pulling the ropes, smiling as he felt the life slowly leaving the body of that bastard. When Machiel finally died, Dong felt genuine happiness. He looked at Chosun, the lady of the night, and said that she was a herbivore, someone without the will to protect herself. Pathetic. Then he observed the crack in the wall and stored it in the inventory, a practice he had been training for future hunts. When he checked the system, he confirmed what he had imagined. He gained experience when he killed people. When he accumulated enough experience, he leveled up and became stronger. Becoming stronger made hunting easier, and the more he hunted, the faster he evolved. In that world, he could become infinitely more powerful. It truly was an incredible place. He looked again at Michelle's body, framing it with his eyes, and commented that it was a pity he did not have a camera there. Later, the attendant waited for Afying, who finally arrived. He asked why she had taken so long, saying that there was a mute waiting for her. She replied that she knew and apologized for the delay. The attendant then wondered if Machiel and Chosun intended to spend the whole night in the room. He knocked on the door, saying that it had already taken too long, but no one answered. Suddenly, he heard a scream. When he entered, he saw Chosun awake, staring at the ceiling in terror. There was Machiel hanging. To the north flowed the Twai River, and at the center the Yangtze River, forming a vast plain. This land had been known since ancient times for its rich and fertile soil, a meeting place of rivers and lakes that boosted trade and business. But where money accumulated, thieves and bandits soon appeared. As hordes of criminals and members of unorthodox factions spread, many rose up to fight them. Thus, many clans and sects dedicated to maintaining the Muram Code established themselves in Anhui. Among them, the most prominent was the Namgug clan, one of the 5 great clans of the Central Plains. And of course, in second place in Anhui came the Danri clan. Although it could not compare to the powerful Namgug clan, the family possessed a specialized elite force called the Heavenly Sword Division. Within it existed the intelligence and execution group known as the Black Crow Squad. The reputation of the Black Crow was famous throughout Anhui, especially for its impressive ability to gather information. Recently, however, that same squad had been facing difficulties with a new case. At that moment, the leader of the Black Crow, Gi Dehio, was analyzing another report of a death classified as self-death. He commented that it was becoming a plague. In the last month, almost 100 people had met the same fate. Dehio knew that this type of case had always existed existed, but normally it was only 1 or 2 per month at most. Now something was strange. The most bizarre part was that all the cases were too perfect. The evidence and circumstances always pointed to self-death. Even so, he did not fully believe it. He asked who had been the first to die. The employee replied that it had been an artisan from the clan Arsenal, a man named Machel. Daiho frowned and asked if the first case had therefore occurred inside Anhui territory itself. Then he asked where it had happened. The man informed him that it was at a nearby inn, the Phoenix Tavern. Daiho decided that he would go there. He needed to see with his own eyes what had happened. Later, he was already standing in front of the room where everything had occurred. The attendant confirmed that he and Chosun had found Machil hanging from the beams of that room. Daiho seriously considered that those deaths might be a series of murders, but he could not understand how the culprit could have entered there to kill Machil without being seen. After searching every corner and every crack, he concluded that there was no way for someone to enter without drawing attention. The only possibility would be through the room next door. He thought that if the wall boards were removed, someone could pass through freely. However, after examining carefully, he realized that the boards had never been removed. He asked if there was any way to take them out without dismantling the roof. The employee replied that there was not. The boards were fitted into the floor and ceiling beams, and it would be impossible to remove them without taking out the beams first. The hero then asked if anyone else had been staying in the room next door. When Machil died, the employee confirmed that there had been. Another guest had arrived around the same time as Machil. The boy was So Sam from the Danri clan. Meanwhile, So Sam was walking his horse through the city, analyzing the system window and the XP he had already accumulated in a good amount. He knew that Machil was certainly a martial artist. Killing someone stronger granted more experience. However, if he faced a real martial artist right now, he would lose without a doubt. Even the weakest member of the Danri clan was still stronger than him at that moment. He needed prey that could serve as a bridge between commoners and martial artists. And at that exact moment, Dong might have found the perfect people for that. He ended up being approached by a group of bandits, who started provoking him, asking if it had been so long that So Sam did not know how to greet his elders, and why he was not answering, or if he had somehow become mute. While hearing that, Dong wondered if those guys really had the courage to speak to him like that. Even the horse seemed disgusted with the situation. He reflected that no matter how much So Sam was considered a failure, he was still a member of the Danri clan, so he could not be treated that way. One of the bandits stepped closer and asked if he was being ignored, then grabbed him by the hair, saying they would have a private conversation. Dong continued holding the horse and calmly analyzing the situation. He wondered if he could kill everyone there without leaving any evidence. If he placed the bodies in the inventory, it might be possible. The problem was the noise, because any commotion could attract attention. Besides, he would not gain that much experience by killing people of that level, so he decided that for now he could take a few hits and deal with it his own way later. But before things could get worse, someone stopped the bandits. It was Jongho, who slowly approached the horse and commented that it was a beautiful breed. The horse became irritated, as if it had understood. Jongho explained that the leader of the Dark Society was completely obsessed with horses, and that he was thinking about giving that one to him as a gift. While speaking, he asked the boy what he thought. Jong realized that the bloodlust of that man was high. From the beginning, he had already planned to kill him and take the horse. Jongho commented that the boy seemed to be thinking too much, but that he never asked the same question twice. It was then that Dong asked why he did not simply kill him at once, since that seemed to be his intention. A bald bandit found it strange when he realized that he could speak. At that instant, Dong quickly drew a sword from the inventory and thrust it straight into Jungho's neck. Not satisfied, he summoned several other weapons at the same time, and a great explosion of light filled the alley. At that moment, Dong rose to level 2, and his aura together with his bloodlust increased drastically. The bandits were completely terrified and shouted to kill that demon, but the real demon there was already ready to finish all of them. After some time, the bald bandit was running in desperation, trying to understand what had just happened. He thought that it could not be real, and that he did not want to die there. He tripped along the way and started crawling, trying to escape in any possible way, but the assassin approached without hurry. The bald man began to reflect that he had always been just another bandit, a guy who beat others to squeeze easy money out of them. He had never seen himself as someone important. He only wanted quick cash. Even so, he was struck on the head and dragged away by Dong. Later, he woke up and saw Dong surrounded by several bodies. The knife was already pressed against his neck. Dong asked who that man was who had acted as if he were powerful and died right at the beginning. The bandit, trembling, replied that it was Lord Jangho. Then Dong asked what society it was that he had mentioned. The man explained that the Black Society was one of the most vicious sects that controlled the alleys of Bongyang, and that Jangho was one of the executives of the organization. Upon hearing that, Dong realized that there was a hierarchy there, something similar to organized crime syndicates of that world. He commented that the information was excellent and told the bandit to reveal everything he knew. He said that if it was useful, he might let him live. The man, already desperate with the blade at his neck, confirmed that the leader of the Black Society was Bang Po Yom, the one responsible for ordering Jongho to kill him and steal the horse. As soon as he finished speaking, the bandit died. The body was stored in the inventory, and Dong checked the alley one more time. There was nothing else there, only his horse. That day, he learned something important. The evil sects were exactly what he was looking for, something between an ordinary civilian and a martial artist, the perfect target for leveling up. For now, he decided that he would prepare for the hunt. He also realized another important thing. As soon as he leveled up, all of his wounds were healed, and even the scars disappeared. He wondered if that would work if his heart or brain were struck. Perhaps when he was was close to leveling up again, he could take a small risk. Besides that, there was the intense light that had filled the entire alley at the moment he evolved. That was a clear disadvantage, because it attracted too much attention. He needed to find a way to hide that effect. The same applied to the inventory. No one could discover that he possessed something like that. A hunter who hides among his own prey needs to appear ordinary. When someone blends completely with the surrounding environment, they become impossible to distinguish. Dong thought that he should only level up when the hunt had ended or when he was alone with his prey. After deciding that, he left with the little horse, reflecting that if Jong-ho had been more cautious or simply stronger, he might have had serious problems. His camouflage of pretending to be mute would not be enough for very long. He needed to become stronger, eliminating beasts that were increasingly more powerful. When he returned to the stable, he realized that the system had encountered a critical error. Proceeding without the system would be difficult, but still possible. Dong imagined that the cause of that error was probably himself. Technically, he should not exist in that world. Even with the system on his side, it was obvious that his presence would create some kind of discrepancy. He even wondered if the simple fact of being there was not already the greatest critical error of all, but he decided that there was no point thinking about it now. When he analyzed his statistics, he noticed something different. Before, that information had appeared only as question marks. Now there were progress bars. Perhaps it was because reality could not be perfectly quantified like in a game. Then he opened his skills. He only had basic swordsmanship techniques, nothing refined, common abilities given to characters in Muri Online. However, the last skill was unknown to him. It was called Spiritual Eye. There was no detailed description, only the name. He did not know what it did, but when he focused on the skill, he was able to see the conditions to activate it. He already met all of them. The Spiritual Eye activated automatically and informed him that there was an enemy at least 10 levels above him, 20 meters away. The count began to decrease. 19, 18, 17. Dong understood that it was some kind of early warning from the system. He then stared at the stable doors, from where that presence was approaching. He thought that it was probably not a common enemy. There were not many people brave enough to invade the Danri clan, and even if it were an intruder, they would not walk so calmly. That indicated someone of a high level, perhaps a master of some clan, someone truly important. He did not know the exact magnitude of a 10-level difference, but considering the effort and the nearly fatal experience required to reach level 2, the distance between them had to be absurd. He wondered how many carnivores he would have to kill to reach level 10, perhaps tens of thousands, and the person approaching seemed to be as strong as all those beasts combined. Among the members of the Danri clan, the most likely candidate was the one who entered the stable. It was Daehyo, leader of the Black Crow. He approached, placed his hand on So-sam's shoulder, and asked if he had been the one who killed Machil. Dong, still maintaining his facade, answered only with confused sounds, pretending to be mute. At that moment, Daehyo made his key circulate through So-sam's body, searching for any sign within him. When he finally finished examining him completely, he realized that there was nothing inside. There was no internal energy at all. He then ordered everyone to leave immediately. One of the men asked if everything was all right, and Daehyo simply continued walking, casting one last look at Dong with his red and predatory eyes. Outside, they asked if they were really going to leave without an interrogation. Daehyo admitted that he had suspected the boy, which was why he had infused ki into his body to check for any trace of martial training. If he had practiced martial arts, there would have been signs, but there was absolutely nothing. The boy seemed to be just an ordinary person. Even so, Daehyo wondered whether those deaths were truly coincidences or if they were facing a plague. He did not know how many more lives would be lost. Curiously, from that night onward, the so-called plague disappeared from Bangyang. No one died in that same way anymore. However, instead of that, new winds of murder began to blow through the city. On a rainy night, some men were drinking in a bar when one of them asked if they had heard the news. Another replied by asking if he was talking about the Nameless Hero. Everyone was talking about him. The drunk man said they should call him Lord Nameless Hero, because that man was busy eliminating evil sects. Half of the malicious organizations, such as the White Tiger Hall and the Red Wolf clan, had already been annihilated. His friend told him to speak more quietly, reminding him that there were still some sects active, and that it would not be good if the Black Society heard that kind of comment. The drunk man simply laughed and said that their turn would come soon as well. Then a man stood up from the bar, placed his hat on his head, and walked straight into the storm. Later, at the gates of one of the evil sects, one guard was sleeping while the other tried to remain alert. He called his companion an idiot and said that the Nameless Hero was out there, that they could die at any moment, and that 3 trivial sects had already been exterminated. Only one remained. In the middle of his complaint, he noticed that his partner was making a strange noise and told him to stop. When he looked to the side, the man's head had already been torn off. Before he could properly react and ask if it was the Nameless Hero, he was also killed. The 2 heads rolled down the staircase under the rain. The Nameless Hero invaded the sect immediately afterward. A rain of arrows was fired at him, but he dodged at the last instant. There was practically an entire battalion waiting for him, all prepared to kill him. One of the men at the front mocked him, saying that he knew how to make an entrance, and calling him the Nameless Rat. Dong remained still for a moment, analyzing the situation and feeling the rain fall over his body. When a thunderbolt tore across the sky, the entire sect advanced at the same time. When he drew his sword, he cut even the falling raindrops. The blade was imbued with blood, death, and destruction, wrapped in a red light that resembled a sinister martial art. He moved through the members of the sect like a storm, slicing, splitting bodies in half, dismembering and decapitating without hesitation. Many of the more powerful martial artists artists did not show fear, but they should have. When they advanced with their weapons shining, Dong seized the opening and pierced the hearts of two at the same time. However, another appeared behind him saying that now he had him. Another thunder echoed. The man declared that his head would be cut off, but Dong summoned the inventory behind the martial artist, and a blade appeared out of nowhere to cut his neck. In the last instant of his life, the man wondered how that sword had appeared behind him. For a brief second, Dong lowered his guard and ended up being stabbed in the stomach. The man in front, who seemed to be the leader, asked if he had finally managed to hit him after watching his men being exterminated. He said he thought he had been facing a monster, but it was just a human. Dong fell to the ground, bleeding under the rain. Then he took off his hat. The others became confused and wondered why he was laughing. With a huge smile on his face, he stood up and rushed forward to kill all of them. Meanwhile, in one of the sect warehouses outside the walls, a man was hiding and listening as the screams began to fade. He realized that they were all dying. He tried to convince himself that he only did small extortions, a bit of human trafficking, selling girls and alcohol, and that there were people much worse in that world. Even so, he could not understand why they were being exterminated like that. When they moved along the path that led to the property of the state leader, the so-called Paradise Mansion, he ordered the archers to fire. The arrows flew toward the shadow that was approaching. In the next second, all the archers were dead. The man drew his sword and asked if he was the nameless hero, and why he was doing that to them. The only answer was the red gaze of the nameless demon. Soon after, his head was separated from his body. Dong made it clear with his actions that he wanted only one thing: their lives, nothing more. After turning the place into a field of corpses, he continued toward the mansion under the rain and lightning that illuminated that land now stained with blood. He went straight to the mansion of the leader of the Black Snake sect, Bang Po Yeom. His killings had begun with the White Tiger Hall. After killing Jang Ho, he managed to gather enough strength, but he was still weak compared to true martial artists. Because of that, he chose to lure enemies, ambush them, start fires, and carry out all kinds of strategic assassinations. When Bang Ho, leader of the White Tiger Hall, finally realized the danger, more than half of his men were already dead. During this process, the authorities and the citizens began to call him the nameless hero. With the mask he wore to hide himself, exterminating evil people became easier. When he killed the leader of the White Tiger Hall, Dong reached level 5 and unlocked his first active skills: lightness and the technique of the three powers. Lightness made his body lighter, allowing him to move without making noise. The three powers still required practice, but with these abilities he could finally face his enemies directly. With time, children began to play in the streets, pretending to be the nameless hero. Meanwhile, the Red Wolf clan was erased from existence. Only one evil sect remained in Bongyang, known as the Black Snake sect. At that moment, Bang Po Yem, leader of the Black Snake sect, calmly admired his garden under the rain. When the nameless hero approached, he asked if that was truly the man they called the nameless hero, and questioned whether he really was a hero, since his body was completely covered in blood. Dong replied that he was not a hero. Bang Po Yem then asked why he was killing the evil sects, but Dong only smiled. Being a hero was exactly what he was not. He had never deceived anyone. People simply believed whatever they wanted to believe. The old man admitted that he was interesting, and said he felt that he could cross the river of the dead that night without any regret. He drew his sword and declared that he wanted to see what the nameless hero was truly capable of. He was ready to die there. The energies of the two collided, just like their swords. Beneath the storm, each impact pushed away the raindrops, as if water was not falling on them, but blood. Bang Po Yom found an opening after wounding Dong. His arm was struck directly and blood gushed out. The master of the Black Snake commented that his body was already in terrible condition, and attacked again with his sneaky technique, always aiming for blind spots like a true snake. Dong realized that the old man was focusing on the wound the entire time, and that at that pace he would eventually lose. Facing the rapid attacks, he was wounded repeatedly. Even so, he decided to sacrifice some flesh for victory, and used the dance of the three powers. The old man reacted with his whip sword. The flexible steel blades twisted and coiled around Dong's body and tore off his left arm. The master asked if the sword was not useful. He did not expect Dong to activate the lightness ability. Suddenly, he leaped like a feather, almost floating, and delivered a kick straight into the old man's stomach, forcing him back before he rose again, using the power of the Black Snake. Bang Po Yeom walked toward him, and said that he was a strange being, someone who did not hesitate to sacrifice his own body. That was not the path of a warrior, it was the path of a hunter. He explained that in a life and death fight between martial artists, whoever has more hidden cards holds the advantage. From beneath his cloak, he revealed a plate of metal scales protecting his torso, and stated that the boy had no hidden tricks, and that this would be his fatal mistake. Without giving him space to react, the master unleashed the Black Snake to finish the assassin. Dong found himself facing the Black Fangs ready to swallow him, but he used lightness again to kick up dust and create a cloud that camouflaged him for an instant. Bang Po Yeom believed he had landed the final blow, but what his weapon pierced was only a corpse used as bait. The real Dong was above him, supported by lightness that made him almost float. He then used the second form of the three powers, the core-cutting strike. The blade descended directly toward the enemy's Danchan. Bang Po-yam blocked at the last instant, sacrificing his own hand to avoid death. Dong realized that the defense had been quick enough to protect the heart. The leader of the Black Snake declared that it was not over yet and pulled back the whip sword, which coiled again, tearing through Dong's body along the way. Even wounded, Dong retaliated using the inventory. He threw several bodies and heads toward Bang Po-yam, creating chaos. The old man was stunned and wondered where all that had come from, realizing that the boy truly had hidden cards. When he noticed that the courtyard had gone silent, he realized that the nameless hero had disappeared. He asked where he had gone and whether he had really fled from the fight. Suddenly, an arrow fired from the forest almost struck him. He blocked it with his sword and told whoever it was to stop with those dirty tricks. Immediately afterward, another arrow came, and this one struck below his eyes, piercing through his head. At that moment, the Black Snake realized that he was the prey. Bang Po-yam, leader of the Black Snake, had become the target. Even wounded, he tried to turn toward the forest where the arrows were coming from. However, that was also a distraction. What was advancing toward him was not only a shadow, but Dong's severed arm, used as part of the plan. In the end, the hunter had turned his own mutilation into a trap, and the leader of the Black Snake finally understood that he had stopped being the predator and had become the prey. Dong pierced through Bang Po-yam from behind, leaving an open hole in the chest of the Black Snake leader. Even on the verge of death, Bang Po-yam murmured that the damned nameless hero had finally destroyed the entire Black society and asked why he had done all of that. Dong replied that he did not need a reason. Humans have always killed other humans, from the time they resembled primates to after they built civilizations. Nothing had changed. The strong prevail or steal from the weak. This time, he was the strongest. Without saying anything more, Dong cut off Bang Po-yam's head. A huge explosion of light filled the center of the mansion. When the level rose, his severed arm regenerated. He wiped the blood from his sword and reflected that with the death of all the members of the Black Society, his preparations were complete. It was time for the next stage, where the strongest among the strong existed, the most difficult prey to hunt. His next destination would be Jianghu. The storm continued to fall on that dark and heavy night. Meanwhile, inside a respected temple surrounded by many followers, an old man asked how much time remained until the Orthodox demonic war. One of the men replied that there were 2 years left. The old man declared that it was already time to slowly advance with a grand plan, and ordered Guangwon to carry out the first stratagem. He replied that yes, his request was an order. The following morning, so Sam walked with the horse through the streets, hearing people excitedly comment that the nameless hero had exterminated the Black Snake sect. Merchants and courtiers were ecstatic. No one had imagined that something like that could happen there. No one believed that someone would truly drive all those criminals out of the city. A drunk man said that at that level, nameless hero was not enough. He should be called the Great Nameless Hero. Another man questioned whether it was right to kill so many people like that, reminding everyone that in the end he was still an assassin. The drunk man retorted that they should remember what those bastards had done, and that ridding the world of that scum was something just, even if he was an assassin, they deserved to die. Another man commented that the authorities and the so-called righteous sects had never cared about the citizens there. In the end, the nameless hero was the one who had truly protected them. Between doubts and toasts, they began celebrating his name, dancing and cheering. Meanwhile, Dong himself passed through the place in silence. Without anyone realizing who he was, he thought that everything had become far too chaotic and that it was already time to leave that place. When he returned to the stable, his spiritual eye once again detected that presence. An enemy at least 10 levels above him was only 10 meters away. When he entered, he confirmed it. Daehyo, leader of the Black Crow Squad, was there, speaking with someone even more powerful. The leader of the Danri clan, the demonic blade, Danri Chunwoo. As soon as Dong entered, the clan leader simply stared at him coldly. Like a good subordinate, Dong bowed in respect, but inside he wondered what they were doing there in the stable. Chunwoo said it was time to say goodbye. He stroked the horse and informed them that on the next full moon, the second daughter of the Namgug clan leader would get married. Daehyo asked if he truly intended to give his favorite horse as a gift. Chunwoo answered that he did, and that he would do something far worse to guarantee the future of his children within the Namgug clan. Daehyo questioned whether that was a marriage alliance or a discipleship ceremony. Chunwoo replied that he would do whatever was best for his children. Even so, Daehyo warned that the Namgug clan might not accept it so easily. Chunwoo then revealed that was why he had called him there. No matter the method used, he only needed to make sure it happened. Daehyo accepted the order without hesitation. Before leaving, Chunwoo said that when they departed for the Namgug clan, they should take that boy along as well, because someone would have to take care of the horse. After that, he left the stable. Dong stood up, brushed off his clothes, and kept a submissive posture while Daehyo continued staring at him with suspicion. Later, Dong was already ready to leave with the horse, but while preparing, he kept thinking about what he needed to do to truly learn martial arts, not just copy superficial abilities. He tried repeating the movements of that old man he had seen earlier, but realized that it was nothing more than a cheap imitation. He understood that he needed to learn for real. The worst way would be to study only through manuals, while the best would be to find a master. The problem was that it would not be easy to become someone's disciple now, because in this world he was already 18 years old, and he had heard that starting martial arts at that age was very difficult. Even so, this trip seemed like a great opportunity. He was going to the Namgug clan, one of the 5 great families, a clan with absolute power in Anhui, so there had to be some path there. He believed believed that he would be able to learn in that place. In front of several men of the clan, Daehyo declared that all members of the Black Crow Hall were gathered and prepared, and asked who was missing among those who would depart on horseback. One of the men replied that aside from the young master and the young lady, everyone was present. Daehyo informed them that Danri Ganghai was probably in some inn in the district of Bangyang, since he hated traveling together with subordinates and would come later. They then decided to leave ahead, but at the moment of departure they noticed that the door was open again. Danri Ganghai was the eldest son of Danri Chunwoo, and known as a prodigy in martial arts, with enough talent to enter the Namgug clan as an outer disciple. The problem was his personality. He was shallow, addicted to drink and women, and always surrounded by negative rumors. Danri went to the inn to fetch him for the journey, but upon arriving he saw the young master being thrown against a wall. At that moment Dong, using his spiritual eye, realized that the enemy had 10 levels more than him. Ganghai shouted that he would kill him, but immediately afterward he was struck by another blow that practically obliterated him. No one could believe what they were seeing, but Dong became excited, thinking that that man was an incredibly powerful expert. The old man who had struck the young master was stepping on his face when Daehyo ordered him to stop and asked who he thought he was. The old man answered with contempt, asking who Daehyo thought he was. Daehyo then introduced himself as the leader of the Black Crow unit of the Danri clan, and stated that the person being humiliated was the young master of the clan. He warned that if the old man did not remove his foot immediately, he would not stand by. The men behind him were already ready to fight. Dong realized that the leader of the Black Crow had no idea who he was facing. That old man was extremely powerful, someone unknown even to the head of intelligence of the Danri clan, who supposedly knew everything about Honghui. With the people present there, it was impossible to defeat him. Even so, while looking at that master, Dong felt that they would not die, because a lion of that level would not use its full strength to crush insects. The old man cleaned his ear with his finger, and asked if the Danri clan was some kind of food. Daehyo questioned how he dared to insult the clan, but the old man replied that if he did not know whether it was something to eat, then maybe it was something to crush, and he pressed Ganghai's head even harder against the ground. At that moment, the leader ordered the entire Black Crow to attack, but the master simply moved his finger and released enough energy to fire kick in the shape of needles. The needles struck the foreheads of everyone present, knocking each of them down. They were not dead, only completely immobilized. Even so, Daehyo remained conscious. The old man commented that for a country bumpkin, Daehyo's eyes were not that bad. Then he introduced himself as Tang Wu, known as the Poisonous Palm, the Soul Hunter. He was one of the 20 strongest of Mori, a group composed of the 2 gods, the 3 monsters, the 5 pinnacles, and the 10 great ones. Tang Wu was the supreme master of the Tang clan, and one of the 10 great. Those who offended him could not escape his poisonous palms even after death, remaining trapped in an eternal poisonous purgatory. Dong thought that the bastard Ganghai had caused a huge incident by provoking someone at Tang We's level. Depending on the circumstances, offending one of the 20 strongest could mean the execution of the entire Danri clan. He had no idea how that would end, until a woman approached calling for her grandfather. She was Tang We's granddaughter, and asked that they leave soon, saying they were just idiotic country bumpkins who did not know what they were doing. Tang W replied that it was fine, and that this beating was already enough for them to understand how vast the world was. He slapped Ganghai on the face a few times, and commented that a descendant of a faction who spent the morning drinking and causing trouble deserved to lose a hand, but that he would not do something so cruel to a righteous faction. Before leaving, he ordered that when that man woke up, they should warn him that if he continued beating women, he would end up dying. Daehyo thanked him for the mercy. Tang Wu replied that it was fine, and with a simple gesture, removed all the key needles at the same time. At the last moment, when everything seemed resolved, Tang Wu looked at Dong. The eyes of the two met, and for an instant it seemed as if their souls collided with each other. Tang Wu then asked his granddaughter to wait a moment and began walking slowly toward the boy, while the men of the Black Crow were still trying to get up from the ground. Dong became confused and wondered if that man was really coming toward him, and for what reason he would do that. When Tang Wu approached, he looked directly at the young man's face and said that it was nothing special. He only had one thing to ask, then he wanted to know what his name was. Since Dong did not respond, Tang Wu concentrated a little of his poisonous energy and repeated the question, wanting to know his name again. Even so, Dong remained silent, which irritated the old master quite a bit. Before the situation worsened, Daehyo explained that the boy was mute. Tang Wu asked if the brat really could not speak. While being stared at like that, Dong began to think that the old man seemed to be evaluating him. His gaze was strange, as if he were observing something precious, like a rare jewel. Dong then realized that if a master of Tang Wu's level was interested in him, that could be a great opportunity. For that reason, he looked back at the old man and released a little of his killing intent. Tang Wu felt that intention immediately, grabbed the boy's arm, and let out a laugh. Then he asked if they were going to Namgug. Daehyo replied that they were, explaining that they were on their way because of a marriage alliance. He also explained that Dong was only the horse caretaker, responsible for managing the precious horse of the leader of the Danri clan, an animal that would be offered as a wedding gift. Tang Wu then asked if there was any problem with taking the boy with him. Daehyo, a little embarrassed, replied that the boy was the only one capable of controlling the horse. The old man simply said that in that case they only needed to transport the horse as well. He stated that when they arrived at the destination, he would take the boy with him and speak personally with the clan leader. If necessary, he would write a letter to the head of the Danri clan and pay for the boy. Dang Hyo was completely shocked by that, but looking at the old master, he realized he had no choice. He explained that originally they intended to offer the boy together with the horse, since he was the only one capable of taking care of the animal. In the end, he agreed that Tang Wu could keep him. The old man replied with satisfaction, saying that it was very good, and immediately told Dong to stop standing around and follow him. Meanwhile, Daehiro was still trying to recover his composure and ordered that the young master be taken to a doctor. The rest of the Black Crow unit would continue the journey. He was not happy about that situation at all, unlike Tang Wu, who seemed to be enjoying himself quite a lot. Thus, everyone departed together toward the Namgu clan. In the middle of the journey, they stopped at an inn to rest. The men stayed there drinking, eating, and recovering their strength before continuing the trip. As expected, Dong was in the inn stable taking care of the precious horse. While working, he reflected on his own abilities. Since the fight against the Black Society, his ability to use the inventory had improved a lot. Now he could summon objects up to about 1 meter around his own body. That was how he managed to create blades behind his enemies. He thought that if he kept training, he might be able to increase that distance even more, which would open the door for many tricks in combat. Even so, he knew that the speed of the launch was still not very fast. A true master would probably be able to react in time. Thinking about this, Dong grabbed a handful of sand from the stable floor and tried to store it in the inventory. Then he brought the sand back to his hand quickly. He was getting better and better at it. However, he also knew that there was another way to use that ability. He swallowed a bit of sand and inside his own stomach transferred the material to the inventory before summoning it out again. Anything that entered his body could be sent directly to the inventory. For him, that was practically a divine art, the divine art of the inventory. Suddenly, Tang Wu's granddaughter appeared and asked why the old man wanted to see him at that hour. Then she asked him to follow her. Dong only looked at her in silence, but decided to follow. The two passed through the inn and reached the luxurious room where Tang Wu was staying. The young woman handed him over to her grandfather, then sat down and made a respectful bow. Tang Wu then ordered the boy to sit on that platform and cross his legs quickly. Tang Wu obeyed without hesitation. Next, the old man ordered him to remove his clothes, all of them. After observing the young man's body, Tang Wu commented that his physical structure was thin, but still not bad. Then Tang Wu took out his Dragon Phoenix golden needles. Their metallic shine alone made the air in the room seem heavier. The granddaughter asked why he was doing that and whether he truly intended to use those needles. The old man then looked at Dong and quoted a saying about an orange that when grown in infertile land does not grow properly, but when planted in the fertile north becomes something juicy and perfect. Dong was shocked because he understood exactly what that meant. The infertile land was the Danri clan, the fertile land was the Tang clan, and the orange was him. If he were taken to the right place, he could become something much greater. Tang Wu explained that from that moment on, he would perform a great ritual on the boy. He said that it would be extremely painful, but that if he survived, he would become something beyond the ordinary. He asked if he wanted that. When the golden needles were completely revealed, a dazzling glow filled the room. The granddaughter warned that deciding something so serious without the consent of the elders could bring trouble. The old man then leaned closer and whispered something into her ear, laughing afterward. Dang, even while pretending to be mute, read his lips and understood everything that had been said. Tang Wu asked if the boy was ready to receive the surname of the Tang family. Dong looked at the old man, then at the needles, and remained silent. He continued pretending to be mute, but he was also genuinely impacted by what was happening. That situation was too big even for him. Even so, he did not show fear. In the Muram world, there were many terms to describe those who were born with exceptional aptitude, such as meridian body, emperor aspect, sacred bones, and heavenly heart meridian. These talents were considered rare, appearing once every 10, 100, or even 1,000 years depending on the category. They were gifts capable of transforming someone's destiny and engraving their name into the history of Muram. But Tang Wu did not care about these rare talents that appeared from time to time. He believed that the boy in front of him possessed something that had never appeared before. Since the beginning of history, Dong's body did not have meridians. At first glance, it seemed like the body of someone who had never trained in martial arts, but that was not the case. He did not have acupuncture points or energy channels like any human being should have. It was as if his body was not human. Tang Wu reflected that having no path meant that anything done could become a path. If molded correctly, that boy could become something extraordinary. If that happened, even the great powers of Murim might bow before the Tang family. The future of the clan might be in his hands. He asked again if Dong intended to accept the family surname. For the boy, that was perfect. It was exactly the opportunity he needed, so he nodded. Even so, Tang Wu explained that he was not yet a full member. He would need to go to the clan and prove himself before the elders and the leader. He might even die in the process. He asked if he still wanted to move forward. Dong nodded once again. The old man opened a wide smile and declared that the great reform ritual would begin. He asked Hua to stand guard outside. She left somewhat displeased, but obeyed. As soon as they were alone, Tang Wu floated behind Dong, carefully examined his body, prepared the golden needles, and without hesitation drove the first one right into the top of his head. At the exact moment the needle pierced him, Dong thought that the two believed he had not heard anything earlier, since they were using sound transmission, but he had read their lips. The skill he had learned when he was a hunter in his previous life was proving useful now. He knew that he possessed a body without meridians. He also knew that the status window and the system were visible only to him. Perhaps that was why he had had ended up in such a strange body, one that did not seem human and did not fit like a normal character in that world. Since Tang Wu had no idea that Dong had gone through transmigration, he must have created all kinds of absurd theories in his own mind. For Dong, that was perfect. He decided to continue his little act as a silent, obedient boy and take as much advantage as possible of that old master. Meanwhile, Tang Wu was already finishing the process. All the golden needles were embedded in Dong's body. The old man thought that this body was something never seen before in that world. Even if the acupuncture points that had been created were temporary, there was no blockage at all in the flow of qi and blood. In fact, the boy's qi flowed even faster than that of ordinary martial artists. That was a talent that appeared once in ages. Then Tang Wu took a small cursed box that exhaled a heavy smell of death. Inside there was a strange centipede, something that would serve to mark the boy as belonging to him. If he could not belong completely to the Tang clan, then he would belong to no one else. The old man placed the insect inside Dong's ear, and soon after removed all the needles from his body. The next morning, Tang Wu declared that the ritual was complete. He said that from that moment on he was no longer the horse caretaker of the Danri family, but a member of the Tang clan, the greatest family of Sichuan. His name would no longer be Su San, now he would be called Tang San. The boy answered simply, confirming it. Then he calmly left the room. Hua, who had been standing guard, was asleep. As soon as he was alone, Tang San took the centipede that had been placed in his body out of the inventory and crushed it without hesitation. The mute of the Danri family was dead. Now he was Tang San of the Tang family. That was his new pair of wings, the impulse to fly toward the sun. Later, somewhere else, some people were enjoying themselves inside a room, until the young woman noticed the presence of a man standing in the shadow. The martial artist managed to dodge at the last instant, but the woman was not so lucky. Blood splattered, staining his expensive East silk clothes, and he was furious to see them ruined. He asked the assassin who he was, but received no answer. The man simply advanced again with his sword. The young martial artist pulled his own sword, that was resting beside him, and blocked the strike. He said that the assassin was far too weak, and began attacking with overwhelming force. The intruder tried to dodge, but the young man released a web of keyblades. Even so, the assassin used shadow arts to disperse that energy with ease, extinguishing all the light. The young man then realized who was standing before him, and commented that it was the Inklight assassin sword. He asked if 10 years had already passed since the last time they had seen each other, calling him Mad Cloud. The assassin replied with precision that 9 years and 190 days had passed. The young man found it curious that he remembered something so specific, and asked what had brought the 18th shadow there. The assassin explained that they had arrived as a shadow from the ashes, and that the first strategy had already been announced. The young man became excited, understanding that the time had finally come. The man then mentioned the Namgu clan and informed him that on the 15th day of that month, the wedding of the inconstant shadow would take place. The young man confirmed the name and asked who the targets were. The answer was clear. Everyone should die except the inconstant shadow and Namgu Kaya. The young man commented that the poisonous palm would soon arrive in Anhui and that their forces might not be enough. The assassin replied that 5 shadows would come to reinforce the mission. That seemed satisfactory. The orders had already been delivered, and now everything depended on him. When he tried to ask again about the name of the inconstant shadow, the assassin had already disappeared. Alone, the young man felt envy. He thought that shadows were supposed to live in isolation forever, but the inconstant shadow had become a hero of their faction, and had even found a bride while he continued trapped there. He called his bodyguard and ordered him to clean the room and remove any trace of what had happened. He also ordered the elimination of all the guards assigned to that day. The bodyguard obeyed without questioning. The man then looked at the illuminated horizon. He was in the Anhui branch of the divine heavenly demon cult, and he was the leader of that place. His name was Silver Demon Paga Heil. In silence, he thought that everything was finally beginning. Meanwhile, Tang Wu advanced through Anhui with the members of the clan, accompanied by his granddaughter and his new disciple. He commented that they had arrived earlier than expected. Tang San looked at the city before him and thought that he was finally there in Anhui, the territory where the Namgu clan ruled as masters. The next morning, Dong experienced the lively city of Anhui up close. It was a festive and busy place full of people walking from one side to another, vendors shouting offers and beggars begging for scraps at the corners. Some of those beggars were being kicked away by impatient guards. At that moment, the young master of that sect asked what was happening, and the guard replied that it was nothing important, that he was only pushing away the beggars who had gathered there. Some people whispered, asking if that man was the star of that day's banquet. Duhio Oka himself, known as the Handsome One, approached the beggars, asked if they were all right, extended his hand to help them stand up, and ordered the guard to share food with them. There was still time before the wedding, so it cost nothing to show generosity. The curious onlookers commented that he was a rising star, different from the others, someone with a kind personality. Now it made sense why the daughter of the Namgu clan had fallen in love with him. Others said that he had traveled alone through Jiangho and defeated even the Nayangi twin brothers, 2 demons who had tormented the region for decades. No one expected the young master to accomplish such a feat, and shortly after become the son-in-law of the Namgu clan. There were even rumors that he had mastered the martial arts of the Thunderblade Emperor, the greatest under heaven in that place, 300 years ago. In the middle of that conversation, someone was pushed violently. It was Tang Wu, who grabbed one of the gossipers and threw him far away, calling them useless and ordering them to get out of the way. He arrived with his imposing entourage entourage, made everyone fall silent, and said that if they had something to say they should say it to his face. Du Hyo-ok asked him to calm down. Tang Wu then asked if he was the young man who had made him come there, and commented that it would have been better to meet him earlier because seeing him that day was a little disappointing. Even so, he asked if Byok the clan leader was inside. Du Hyo-ok replied that the leader was waiting, and offered to guide him to the Hall of Kings. As they walked, Tang-san observed everything in silence, but inside he was surprised. His system and his spiritual eye indicated that Du Hyo-ok was more than 10 levels above him. There was a subtle difference between him and Tang Fu, but it was still enormous. In addition, Du Hyo-ok moved constantly at an accelerated rhythm, a sign of someone at an extremely high level. Tang-san reflected that every human being has small asymmetries in the face and the shoulders and the size of the limbs, but that man was too perfect, symmetrically flawless. It was as if he were wearing a body shaped with artificial precision. For Tang-san, that meant one thing: that man was the same kind as him, someone hidden inside a body different from the original, another predator. He felt that he was standing before someone like himself, only at another stage. In the Hall of Kings of the Namgu clan, Tang Wu admired the swords embedded in the ceiling, weapons that had belonged to the former leaders of that place. Even so, he commented that they called themselves kings, but died and were buried like any commoner. Without waiting for an invitation, he climbed the stairs and opened the doors naturally. An old man approached, saying that his uncle had finally arrived, and that it had been a long time since they had last seen each other. Tang Wu replied in his direct manner, calling the sight of the place deplorable, but the clan leader laughed and embraced him, saying it was good to see him again. Even Hua was surprised when she realized that her grandfather had so much familiarity with the leader of the Namgu clan. Soon a woman approached her. It was Hua, a sister of the clan. The two were close. Du Hwa-ok also introduced himself to Hua, and she commented in a slightly teasing tone that now she should call him the son-in-law of the family. Hua joked that she had never imagined that someone shy like Hua would marry before her. In the middle of the conversation, Hua asked who the person standing in the back was. Everyone looked at Tang-san, who remained in the shadows of the entrance. He then stepped forward and calmly introduced himself as Tang-san. Hua showed slight dissatisfaction, but Do Hyo-ok greeted him with respect. Tang-san answered with a discreet smile. Do Hyo-ok commented that night he intended to go to Lake Soho with Hua and invited the two of them to accompany them. Later, they really went to the lake. Tang-san decided to go as well. The place was beautiful, illuminated by candles, by the lights of the city, and by the reflection of the full moon on the water. Du Hyo-ok explained that the lake was famous for its view, and that it became even more beautiful under the full moon. Hyo commented that the reflection of the moon there was truly enchanting. While the women talked, Du Hyo-ok approached Tang-san and suggested that since they were busy, the men could drink a little. He said he would go get a liquor for the two of them. When he walked away, Tang-san watched his back carefully. On the surface, Du Hyo-ok was the future son-in-law of the Namgu clan, a hero admired by everyone, but for Tang-san, it was clear that there was something more there. He could clearly feel that the man was a predator, hidden beneath a perfect appearance, and he could only perceive that because he was one as well. Someone of that level was certainly planning something big. The problem was that he did not know what it was, or what the objective was. Even so, he had the feeling that without meaning to, he had been dragged into the center of a great secret plan. Tang-san's spiritual eye once again warned him about the presence of another powerful enemy. He quickly analyzed the environment. The boat was about 25 meters long and 5 meters high, so the enemy could only be on the deck. When Do Hyo-ok returned with the liquor, he apologized for the delay and explained that the drink had been stored in a strange place. Tang-san stayed alert, asking himself whether besides Do Hyo-ok, another dangerous person had appeared there. The young master presented the drink as golden sprout liquor, strong and rare, and said they would drink in Tang-san's name. Tang-san replied that he needed to do a small thing first, and asked where the bathroom was. Du Hyo-ok said he only needed to ask the boatman. As soon as he headed toward the deck, the spiritual eye confirmed that he was getting closer to the enemy. As he walked, he analyzed the terrain and activated the system. It was not just one, there were five enemies with a level difference equal to or greater than 10 compared to him. He went up again and looked at the illuminated lake. If the objective had been to kidnap Namgu High, they would have already done it. The fact that they had not acted yet indicated that the target was probably the Namgu clan itself. Each one of those enemies had at least 10 levels more than him, maybe 20 or 30. If 4 or 5 people of that caliber invaded the clan, it could mean its fall. He was trapped between two extremes. Tang Wu was by his side, and the enemies of the Namgu clan were right ahead. Strangely, that situation excited him. If the conflict was about to explode, he would make his move as well. When the boats finally approached the headquarters of the Namgu clan, the invaders began to infiltrate. One of them asked if it was not excessive to check everything again. The big man of the group replied that it was not a matter of exaggeration, but of obedience. He ordered them to check every corner. The subordinate grumbled that it was a waste of time, but the leader argued that with the wedding about to happen, it was normal to check 2 or 3 times. Impatient, the big man literally threw the subordinate into a room so he would check it quickly. He stayed outside, saying that a real man should cut heads while singing, not stand around being afraid. He even commented that if a real enemy appeared, at least he would not be bored. While the 2 subordinates searched the place, complaining about being there while the others were drinking, something moved in the shadows. Tang-san appeared silently. The first victim fell without even realizing what was happening. The second was decapitated before he could scream. Even the sounds were swallowed by the shadows. Outside, the big man man began to find the delay strange. He grabbed a torch and went down into the basement. On the way, he saw an arm floating in the air and became confused. He continued forward and found several bodies impaled on blades. In the middle of that scene, Tang San was standing there, calmly observing his own work. When the big man entered, he commented that the arm that was missing to complete his piece had finally arrived, and that judging by the size it would serve perfectly.